The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the hills, casting long shadows across the peaceful farmland where Ibrahim Traore sat quietly in his garden. It was a rare moment of calm after many days of toil and leadership struggles, and he allowed himself to rest without worries pressing down on his shoulders. His hands, weathered and strong from years of service, gripped the wooden railing of the veranda as his eyes scanned the horizon. The world outside his garden felt distant, almost like another life. But in the distance, a storm was gathering, one that would not be easily weathered. It began with a call, the kind of call no son should ever receive. The air around him seemed to grow colder as he listened to the voice on the other end of the line, calm, calculated. A voice dripping with the cold certainty of someone who had no fear of consequences. "Ibrahim," it said, "your mother's safety is in our hands now. If you wish to avoid consequences, you will step down and allow us to exploit your nation's resources without resistance. If you refuse, we will take matters into our own hands." The words echoed in Ibrahim's mind long after the call had ended. His blood boiled and his heart pounded in his chest. This was not just about politics or economics. It was personal. This was about a global mining company, a giant in the industry, that had long set its sights on the rich resources buried beneath the soil of Burkina Faso. They had tried to buy their way into the country, using power, manipulation, and deceit to seize control. But this time they had overstepped. They had threatened his mother, the one person who had always stood by him, the one person who had given him the strength to keep fighting, even when the odds seemed impossible. Ibrahim had always known that the power of these foreign corporations was vast. Their influence stretched far beyond the borders of Africa, and they had used their wealth to silence anyone who dared to stand against them. But his mother had never been one to cower in the face of danger. She had taught him to face his challenges head-on, to stand firm in the face of adversity. And now, more than ever, he would need to live up to her teachings. His mind raced as he thought about the threats they had made. They believed they could manipulate him with fear, that they could break him with their power. But Ibrahim Traore had been through too much to be intimidated by a phone call. He had faced down bullets, defied powerful adversaries, and weathered storms that would have broken lesser men. This was no different. This was a fight for his family, his country, and his people. In the days that followed, Ibrahim became a man possessed. He immersed himself in his work, seeking to gather allies and information that could help him take down the mining giant. His office became a war room. Maps of Burkina Faso's vast mineral resources were pinned to the walls, alongside documents detailing the corrupt dealings of the foreign corporation. Every hour of the day was spent strategizing, planning, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. But it wasn't just the corporation that he had to worry about. He was up against a system that had been built on years of exploitation, where greed and power reigned supreme. The government officials, many of whom had been bribed or bought off by the mining company, were all too eager to do their bidding. They thought Ibrahim was just another leader who could be bought or intimidated into submission. But Ibrahim was different. He had seen too much, fought too hard, to be bought by anyone. He had watched his people suffer, seen the destruction, wrought by foreign companies who cared nothing for the land or its people. The time for silence was over. The time for action was now. He wasn't alone in this fight. As the tension built, a figure emerged from the shadows. Aminata Diallo, a young woman whose past was intertwined with the very corporation he was fighting against. Aminata had once been one of the many victims of the mining giant's greed. Her family had been displaced when the company came to exploit the land, their homes destroyed in the process. But Aminata was no victim. She had become a fierce advocate for the people, fighting to expose the company's corrupt practices. Ibrahim had heard whispers of her work, but it wasn't until they met that he realized just how deeply their paths had intertwined. One night, Aminata arrived at Ibrahim's office with an encrypted document, one that would change everything. It contained the evidence that could bring down the mining giant, details of illegal land deals, bribes, environmental destruction, and human rights violations. It was the smoking gun Ibrahim had been waiting for. But there was something else in the document that shook him to his core. Aminata had been personally affected by the company's actions, and she was willing to risk everything to ensure they were held accountable. "Ibrahim," she said, her voice quiet but determined, "they took everything from me, but I will not let them destroy any more lives. I'm with you in this fight." In that moment, Ibrahim realized something he had not fully grasped before. This battle was not just his own. It was the fight of the entire nation, the fight of every person who had been silenced by the powers that sought to exploit them. Traore mining company had threatened his mother, but it had also threatened the very fabric of his people's dignity. It was a fight for justice, for honor, and for the future of Africa itself. The tension in Ibrahim's home was palpable as he prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. The media had already begun to catch wind of the story, and the eyes of the world were now focused on Burkina Faso. Ibrahim was no longer just a leader in his country. He had become a symbol of resistance. His face, determined and unyielding, had appeared on every news outlet, his words resonating with millions who had grown tired of watching their countries fall prey to foreign exploitation. And then the day came. Ibrahim stood before the world, his voice steady and resolute, as he delivered a message that would echo across the globe. The press conference was broadcast live, and the moment Ibrahim revealed the mining company's corruption, the world held its breath. "Enough is enough," he declared. "We will not be silent any longer. These corporations have poisoned our land, stolen from our people, and destroyed our communities. But today, we say no more. Today, we stand together as one, united in our determination to protect what is ours." The response was immediate. Protests erupted in cities around the world, demanding that the mining company be held accountable for its actions. Governments that had previously turned a blind eye to the company's abuses were forced to take action. The corporation's stock price plummeted, and its leaders were summoned before international courts to answer for their crimes. As the dust settled and the world watched in awe, Ibrahim stood quietly with Aminata by his side, the weight of the victory sinking in. He had not just won a political battle, he had won a moral victory for his people. And as he returned home that evening, he knew that the fight was far from over. The mining company's collapse was only the beginning. The true challenge lay in rebuilding, in healing the wounds of a nation that had been ravaged by greed and exploitation. But for now, as Ibrahim stood in his garden, the evening breeze carrying the scent of the earth, he allowed himself a moment of peace. His mother had raised him to be strong, to never back down in the face of adversity. And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he knew that he had made her proud. The world had watched as Ibrahim Traore brought a global mining giant to its knees. But in his heart, he knew that this was just one chapter in a much larger story, one that was still unfolding, one that would be written by the people who dared to stand up and demand their dignity. As the stars began to twinkle above, Ibrahim Traore stood tall, a man who had fought for his people, for his family, and for the future of a continent. And with the strength of his mother's love guiding him, he knew that no power on earth could ever break him again.